Look at this. Oh, another amazing question. Chef's kiss. My name is Trish Law. I am a trauma-informed life coach, and I'm here. My purpose on this planet is to help you get to the root of you are so you can live the absolute best, most authentic, superpower-filled, fucking amazing life ever, including with trauma. Let's use this question to learn some more stuff. What if you don't remember your childhood? It's hard to heal from something you don't remember. Fucking fair. Well, let's differentiate memory. Okay, there's two kinds of memory we're going to talk about right now. The first is the memory that we're referring to here, like your actual conscious memory. And then there's another type of memory, which is like a cellular body-based memory. So can we agree that there are two different kinds of memory here? And we have to understand two things. The body remembers everything. The brain has selective memory. In other words, these two things work against each other because the body always tells the truth. The brain is trying to keep you alive. So sometimes if it's a really difficult truth, the brain is going to try to keep you safe from that. Additionally, your ego is in development, which is your brain, your survival hardware. Everybody gets one, just like Oprah was giving out cars. Everybody gets an ego. Can't kill it, spiritual people. Can't kill your ego, okay? Listen up, can't kill your ego. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Okay, great, thanks for that. We're gonna come back to center. So the ego's in development between the ages of 0 and 10 to 14 years old. In other words, it's automating, it's assessing information, it's discarding information. If you wanna get technical about it, it's called your reticular activating system, RAS, okay? That system is like hardware. It is based on keeping you alive. Many of the traumatic experiences we had happened before we actually had language, right? So if we had a traumatic experience, sometimes we don't remember it with our conscious mind. Our body always remembers it. So the question is, how do you heal from something if you don't have a conscious memory of it? Does that make sense? And the cool thing is you don't need like a shaman or an ayahuasca ceremony or shit yourself or throw up in front of a bunch of people to get to this answer. What you need to do is follow your triggers. I've said this before, and this is just an easy, practical way to begin to understand what's going on in your cellular memory, not your actual memory, because this you cannot trust. This is not to be trusted 100%. This needs to be updated. Your conscious memory needs to be trained. And so we're going to talk about how to do that as we move through. But for right now, let's just get into the body. And I'm going to show you some very, very easy, practical ways to understand the non-linguistic, emotional part of you so that you can begin to heal on a deeper level. So what I want you to do is I want you to keep a log of your triggers. Triggers are time machines. Triggers are a gateway to our trauma. In other words, whenever we have a trigger in our physical body, like for example, somebody really pisses you off and you almost get hijacked by your own brain, that you're so intensely activated in your physical body that your brain just all of a sudden the crazy train leaves the station. Does that make sense? When you react, you either shut down or you freeze or you fight or you fawn. Right? By the time we get to the behavior, the crazy train has left the station, right? The trigger has been hijacked by the survival mechanism and the ego is in charge of everything at that point. So what you and I need to do is get better at understanding what's underneath the trigger, right? So rather than keeping a gratitude journal, at least for maybe the next week to 2 weeks, maybe even a month, what you're going to do is you're going to keep a trigger journal because every trigger is tied to a trauma, typically from something you don't even consciously remember. So this is the way I do it with my clients. There's a step-by-step process to it. The first thing is you sit down at the end of the day and you identify who and what triggered you. In other words, what was the catalyst to that emotional experience, especially if it was a big one? Name the trigger. Second thing you want to do is name the emotional experience you had as a result of that trigger. Were you sad? Were you angry? Were you happy? Were you afraid? Were you anxious? What happened in your physical body? So start to differentiate the trigger from the emotional response. Next thing you want to do is you want to identify the story that your survival mechanism made up about this experience. Like that person was an asshole, that person doesn't understand me, that person, whatever, or this thing happened and I'm a piece of shit. So there is like sort of a progression. And then after that story, there's always a behavior. You can even go through the categories of fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. You can use those very simple things. So basically it goes trigger, what happened? What emotional experience did it bring up? What are the story that my brain made up about it, and then what was the behavior that I witnessed in myself. In other words, what we're doing here is we're creating a separation from the thoughts, the feelings, and we're creating what we refer to in the healing as a witness consciousness. So you're observing this from a zoomed out perspective a little bit. Every single emotion you have is basically controlling your life, and it's being automated by your ego, right? So especially if it's uncomfortable. And this is where the patterns come in, because the ego is the thing creating the patterns. The ego's job on the planet is to ascertain, create, and establish certainty, even if it kills you in installments, even if you keep repeating the same things over and over again. I want you to think of your triggers or your patterns as like vultures circling a deer carcass way underneath. You got to get to that carcass. You got to get down into the root of it. And the root of it is in the emotional experience. And I want you to start naming the emotions. In other words, rather than go into this crazy story, which is never going to help you heal ever, what you need to do is start naming the emotions under it. It's fucking magic. The minute you start naming those emotions, you're going to start to see that there's a sense of peace. Now, underneath that is a relationship. It's probably the most important relationship you're ever going to have for the rest of your life. We're totally going to get into that. But when you start connecting to that non-linguistic part of you in your emotional body, you are connecting to your own inner child. It is the root of your being. It is the most important relationship you will ever have for the rest of your life. That part of you does not have words. That part of you talks to you every fucking single day, but it has no language. It only speaks through emotion. So when you make contact with that part of yourself, you have got the beginning stages of what I'm going to refer to as quantum mechanics and quantum entanglement. This is also the components of manifestation, but we'll get there at some point. So what I want you to do, log your triggers, get to the emotional experiences, start to differentiate the stories and the behaviors. Stories and behaviors are ego. The emotion is the gold mine. It's the inner child. Start creating a relationship with that part of yourself, and you're in the first major step to your healing journey. I love you. I can't wait to keep doing this with you. Let me know if you have questions. Share this, save it, and we're going to keep going.